Once a man got in a shipwreck and ended up on a desert island. Every day he prayed, asking God to send someone to rescue him. But days passed, and to the great disappointment of the man, the rescuers never came. A few months later, he learned to survive on the island. He built a hut and gradually gathered all his belongings that were scattered around the island after the shipwreck. He hunted and fished to avoid dying of hunger. And soon he could provide himself with almost everything necessary to survive. But then one day, after another hunt, he saw to his horror that the hut was in flames. Everything he had on the island was in that thick smoke. The only things left were his clothes on him. At first he was shocked, but then his shock was replaced by anger. In rage, he raised his hands to the sky and shouted, "Oh Lord, how could you let this happen? I prayed for months to be saved, and no one came. And now, even these few things that I had are on fire. How could you do this to me? Why? Why would you let this happen?" The man knelt down, completely exhausted, and cried. He didn't know what to do and how to live on. In desperation, he blankly stared towards the ocean. Suddenly, he noticed something. A ship was approaching the island. He could not believe his eyes. He was finally getting rescued, he thought. The ship arrived, they got him aboard, and they sailed off to the mainland. During the voyage, he asked the captain of the ship, "How did you find me?" The captain answered right away. "We were sailing across the ocean, following our regular route, when we noticed a plume of smoke on the horizon. I decided to come closer and see where the smoke was coming from. And when we went ashore, we found you." We often encounter difficulties and problems in our life, but we should always remember that the evil sent to us can turn into good at any moment. Sometimes even a disaster can be a blessing, even if it doesn't seem that way at first. Ryan and Arthur studied in the same class. They were brilliant students, and everybody expected a bright future for them. In the senior year, an old teacher asked them, "Have you already decided who you want to be in this life?" Ryan answered confidently, "Yes, I think I've decided. I want to teach." Arthur laughed when he heard this answer. "So boring. I haven't decided yet, but I'll definitely choose something more interesting. With our talents, youth, and energy, we can do anything. And you choose to teach? That's funny." They graduated with excellent grades and started their adult lives. Few years passed. One day, Ryan and Arthur ran into each other in a movie theater. Arthur cheerfully asked, "So, how are you?" Ryan said, "Good. I've graduated from the university. Now I'm working at school." Arthur was surprised. "In a regular school? Why?" In response, Ryan just asked, "Well, how about you? Have you decided on your career?" Arthur proudly answered, "I went to university for a while, but I realized that this is clearly not what I need. I'm a free man and I try myself in different fields and I'm happy." Ryan sighed. "You're lucky. I can't do it like that. If I decided to go this way, I'll have to do that. You know, I wish I was like you." They went off their ways. 10 years passed. Their class gathered for reunion. They invited the teachers to that event too. When Ryan appeared in the hall, all the attention was drawn to him. You do not get to talk to a famous scientist every day who created his own teaching methodology and opened dozens of schools. Classmates couldn't stop admiring Ryan and showered him with questions. At that moment, Arthur appeared in the hall. He modestly walked into the very corner, trying not to attract attention. However, Ryan did notice him. He said, "Why are we talking about me? Look, Arthur is here. Tell me, what happened to you during that time? The last time we met, you had such an interesting life." Arthur smiled confusedly, but he didn't answer anything. Then another person walked into the hall. Arthur decided to leave in a hurry. The hall was filled with laughter. Arthur hurried to leave. On the doorstep, he ran into that old teacher. The teacher was surprised. "Why are you leaving so soon? You just got here." Arthur sadly looked down. "Tell me, teacher, how did that happen? Both of us, Ryan and I, were the best students. Now, he's an important man over there, and me, I'm just a salesman in the store." The teacher said, "Yes, you were both equally talented and full of aspirations, except he knew where he wanted to go, and you kept wandering the roads while you couldn't find yours." No matter how much strength and energy a man spends, if he doesn't know where he wants to go, he'll never succeed.
In the office of a large company, work was in full swing as always. Gerald, a young employee, went about his usual routine. But soon everyone was asked to take a break from work to greet the new employee. A middle-aged man was led into the office. His name was Nick. Gerald found him a little odd. The newcomer nodded his head modestly in greeting. It turned out he was deaf. This surprised many employees. Gerald often saw Nick ask his boss questions in the general chat. "It won't last even a couple of months," Gerald told his colleague, looking at the newcomer, although he himself sometimes helped the newcomer to solve some issues. Gerald's predictions were fully justified. They worked for a large international company. Communication and speed of work played the biggest role here. The company was also going through hard times. This year, deadlines for the delivery of projects were disrupted. Employees weren't keeping up. In such a situation, the deaf Nick seemed helpless because there was no direct dialogue with him. Occasionally, Gerald and his colleagues would talk about Nick during their noisy lunch break. Nick preferred to eat and work at his table at the same time. A month later, the company had an emergency. The deadlines were on fire, and the boss summoned everyone to a meeting. He inquired his employees about the reason for this failure. In response, he heard only excuses. No one could offer a way out of the situation. However, Nick wrote a few words on a piece of paper and passed it on to his boss. The boss smiled and nodded his head. After that, Nick immediately left the office and began to work. After the meeting, all employees of the department gathered to discuss the work plan. Gerald noticed that Nick had decided not to even listen to them. The man sat and worked, drinking coffee. In the following days of intense work, the general chat of the company was bursting with questions to the authorities. In this chaos, Gerald noticed only a few short messages from Nick. He was very surprised at how Nick grasps everything on the fly. Even though he was deaf, it didn't stop him from working hard. Gerald was even glad that Nick was able to adapt here and work. Soon, everyone in Gerald's department began to notice that the work was getting better. Of course, everyone began to praise themselves. Everyone except Nick. Then the boss came to them to make an announcement. He announced the best employee of the department who was getting promoted, and it was Nick. While you were chatting, arguing, asking me endless questions, Nick was just doing his job, the boss said proudly. Gerald was glad that Nick was able to show himself and surprise everyone. Gerald understood one simple truth. It doesn't matter what people say, but what they do.